Hello, hello, builders. This is The Engine. I'm your host, Sasha Berry. The Engine is a show about building in Web3 and with Web3. So whether you're already building in Web3 or you're just trying to figure out what this whole Web3 thing is about, you're in the right place. Stick around. The Engine is powered by Skylab, a community of Web3 builders. Between ourselves, we often describe it as AA for founders, except for we're not trying to quit being founders. Quite the opposite. We're trying to stick with it, and it's always better with a friend. And it's even better when it's a community of people who are building towards the same goals, who are there to give you support, who are there to give you feedback, who are there to test your products and tell you what they think. So that's what we do at Skylab, and if that's something that you're looking for, check out skylab.xyz. The membership is free, but it's invitation only, so fill out the form and somebody will reach out. The link is in the description. This week's guest, Russel Castagnaro. He is a Venture Steward at Bufficorn Ventures. He is a digital transformation leader. He's passionate about blockchain, crypto, and especially about eGovernment and eCommerce. For many years, he was in charge of building the digital side of the state government in Hawaii. Then in 2017, he caught the crypto bug and created Wampei, a startup that helped unbanked companies to do their business electronically without local bank and with crypto. And then he returned to state service, but in the state of Colorado now, working on digital identity, and then back to private, working for Bufficorn Ventures and SporkDAO. Most of you, I'm sure, have either attended or at least have heard of ETHDenver, which is a flagship event of SporkDAO. And Russel is a big part of that. So he is a perfect person to talk about crypto and government. And turns out that this was a perfect week to talk about that topic because it was probably the biggest week for crypto in DC ever. Personally, I'm really optimistic, and mostly not because of all these legislations and tweets and expressions of recognition towards crypto, but specifically because of the approval of Ether ETFs. And that is because money talks. It's no longer just a place for shadowy super coders and grifters. It is a legit asset, and it is a whole economy. Once the mainstream investors start putting their money into Ether ETFs, people will start learning about Ethereum ecosystem and all of those things that have been built there. All of the L2s, all of the protocols, all the stable coins, all of the different assets, RWAs, NFTs, all of that stuff is becoming part of the value of these ETFs. Now it has to be recognized. And that is what will help our industry to get the important legislation and regulation for our industry all the way to the top of the hill. And that is what makes me really optimistic about the future of crypto in the US. So, good week to be in crypto. And good week to talk about crypto and government. And we'll get right into my conversation with Russel. But first, a quick word about the contributors of the season 1 of The Engine, Threshold Network and Build Cities. Threshold Network provides a suite of threshold cryptography services. So if you're building an application that involves private data and trusting an intermediary won't fly, you may want to check out Taco, which is the only encryption and access control plugin that is end-to-end decentralized. So what is Taco for? Builders are using it in various applications such as seed phrase recovery, crypto inheritance, media libraries management, and even concealing in-game assets. And these are just some of the use cases. You can use Taco to build a decentralized password manager or location sharing plugin, or even a live streaming platform, or any other dApp that involves private data. So go to threshold.network, check out Taco documentation, and see how you can easily integrate that plugin into your dApp. Build Cities is a global cooperative of startup cities. The world is changing rapidly. Resources and expertise that are so needed to create businesses and innovation used to be locked into certain ecosystems for centuries. But now, these resources are flowing freely around the world, empowering local communities. Passports and visas may still limit our ability to travel, but we can teleport anywhere over Zoom and collaborate with our partners all over the world. Build Cities is creating a digital infrastructure that empowers this collaboration and innovation and connects builders from all over the world. Check out their website and see how in this new world, Lagos is not far from Los Angeles and London, and Nassau is right next to Phuket and Paris. You can join the community right now with your Discord login. You can also mint a Dream, which is a collaborative AI NFT that serves as a pass to the entire Build Cities ecosystem, including all of their IRL events throughout the year around the country. The link is in the description. Okay, now let's dive into my chat with Russel Castagnaro. Russel Castagnaro is on the engine today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
We are covering another gigantic topic, as always, and Russel is one of the best people in the industry to talk about because he's been working on the intersection of crypto and government from basically the beginning of your journey in crypto, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I always start with this question. What brought you into crypto? What was this light bulb moment for you that made crypto make sense and made you want to devote your life to this industry?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird, right? So I was at the time I was the president of Hawaii Information Consortium, and we had the contract to do all of the electronic government and electronic payments for the state of Hawaii and for the counties. So it was like, you want to, register your business, pay your taxes, get married, do a camp out, order Obama's birth certificate, any of those things, you would do it through the services that we created. And part of our model was that we did was called self-funded. So we didn't charge the state for the stuff that we wrote to do it. We just made it so we would get a transaction fee. Right. So we were like Ticketmaster if it was like geared towards doing public good work instead of being so evil. And so that was great. And so what happened in around 2012, the Hawaii legislature was actually the first state to legalize cannabis through its legislature. Everywhere else before it had been done through like a ballot measure. And so Amazing. I was able to work with the legislators who were working on the bill. The previous year we had switched the medical program, which was of course not technically legal, over from the Department of Public Safety, the cops, to Department of Health, which by the way made people feel infinitely more comfortable working with the program because they didn't have cops coming to ask them questions about it. Big surprise there. And so we were able to work with legislators like Senator Green, we worked a lot with back then. And we came up with, okay, this is what needs to happen. We did a bunch of research. It was what was happening in other states as far as setting up dispensaries for medical marijuana. And the licensing fee was $10,000 to apply. And of course, we were going to write that system, and taking that payment would be an important part of what we did, except they don't have bank accounts because they're selling cannabis. So I went to South by Southwest, which is the only place I could figure out where to go to find out about this stuff. And,
in 2012.
I went to everything. Yeah, I think it was 2013 actually. When I went to South by Southwest, so it was like we were working on it at the end of 2012, and then got there and I was like, okay, we can actually do this using Bitcoin, add Bitcoin into our payment processing.
So was there a Bitcoin side event at South by South, or who did you connect with there?
So basically I went there, I saw that there were like 3 talks on Bitcoin. And then once I got there, it had really started heating up. I think I was even quoted in Forbes talking about government stuff with doing Bitcoin and everything. And so we were, I was like, okay, I need to figure out whether this is possible. And there, between there and in reading the various books, like, the complete book on Bitcoin and, all the different classic books that you read on this, I was like, okay, we can actually implement this. It's not hard. And I had come from a background of payment processing. Already at that point, I'd been in it for over 10 years. In fact, and it's like kind of silly to talk about, but I got to cut my teeth in consulting doing the first credit card e-commerce site in the United States for Universal Card Services, where people could actually see their bill online, log in, pay their AT&T phone bill, and stuff like that. Even like 3 years before PayPal was accepting electronic payments. So I've been in it for a long time.
Wow.
I understand like how the costs of doing credit card, how those line up and how they're very hard to really know exactly how much you're paying, the intricacies of doing EFT or ACH payments and how those are handled by banks. We burned through 3 different banks in Hawaii because our volume was so high. Just all sorts of crazy things about payment processing and how actually complicated that is, how much risk there is associated with it. And what was really interesting to me about Bitcoin was that it wasn't custodial, right? We didn't have to have someone's key in order to facilitate a payment like you do in credit cards or in ACH. So,
and you don't have to deal with the bank.
And you don't have to deal with the bank at all, right? Well, you do because you have to offboard, right? And so that was still a portion of it, but that ironically wasn't quite as difficult back then as it is as it became later on. If you get into like 2017, 2018, 2019, it got bizarre. So we had implemented a system to allow the payments. The CIO, it was the first year the state had a CIO before they just had a head of accounting services. And so he was like, oh, this is pretty cool, and we implemented it. And a week after we implemented it, let me just say that the financial services powers that be approached the legislature and changed the bill to read must pay with a paper check. And so
Bitcoin didn't make it that time.
So we couldn't accept it. We couldn't even take ACH or credit card anymore. We had to take paper checks.
Which is so bizarre to me. Coming from Russia, I grew up in the 90s, so we didn't have personal bank accounts before that in the Soviet Union. So we went straight to cards. We never had paper checks. And then very quickly to mobile banking. And mobile banking is much better in Russia, ironically, because it doesn't have all those old wheels getting in the way of the new track, where in America, people are still, the idea of taking a picture of a paper check with your phone to put it into your bank account is just so absurd if you really think about it, because it's a payment that doesn't have to touch paper.
Right. And yet you paper it out. You paper it out is what it's. We don't have enough time to get into the bizarreness of the sort of conventional payments industry and the technology behind it, but it is no less fascinating in the exact opposite way than Bitcoin and blockchain-based payments were, in a more positive way. But that's what you have when you have a technology. Basically, banking was run by fax machines for a long time, for 25 years. And that's why things work that way in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But even though that had been nixed, right? I caught the bug, and within 2 years of that, I had already started working on a plan for how we could do payments more broadly. And then when the company that owned us, we were a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called NIC, they just weren't interested in taking on the risk that they perceived with Bitcoin payments. And of course, all that we were talking about was Bitcoin back then. Then I ended up starting Wampei, which was a custody-less cashiering system for at-risk business. Basically, the idea was that anyone, anywhere could accept payments electronically with or without a bank. And it was essentially a cashiering system that you owned your keys. We didn't own any of that stuff, and you used it software as a service, and it would allow you to accept crypto payments. It ended up that we primarily worked with high credit risk companies, like cannabis, like sex workers, like sex toy companies who, believe it or
Yeah.
not, weren't allowed to take credit cards in a lot of states. That's what got me in, was the relative ease, and that you could almost eliminate fraud. You can't eliminate theft, but crypto almost eliminates fraud from the standpoint of payments. In other words, somebody else isn't going to pay with your wallet. What they're going to do is they're going to steal all your money. They're not going to do transaction by transaction, and that was, and the amount of cost that you save as accepting payments with something like crypto, with Bitcoin, was remarkable.
For you, the light bulb was the payments specifically, which is quite forward thinking of you. And I guess in the early Bitcoin days, people did believe that Bitcoin will be used as a legal tender for payments. I feel that narrative kind of died down because of how volatile and how expensive Bitcoin has become, and people just think of it more as a store of value rather than a payment. But now we have stable coins, and now we have a whole new way of facilitating payments and putting payments on the blockchain rails. And we actually see now bigger companies take that on, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the only other company that was really doing anything like it was BitPay back then, and they were custodial, they were money exchangers, and we tried to not be money exchangers, but it was exciting, and to be fair, I'm still a payment maxi. People talk about all these other things, and I think we in the last crypto summer, we put a lot of energy into a lot of suboptimal things and things we shouldn't have, instead of doing things like basically owning the payment companies like Paywise, and and all these, anybody who's doing peer-to-peer payments internationally, remittances, and even the credit card companies, like, they cannot compete, and I feel like we've really missed an opportunity last time, and I hope we don't miss it this time. In really just It's just such a safer, cleaner way to do transactions, to do any
Well, and part of it is sort of crypto's PR and the mainstream perception of our industry, and that challenge of crossing the chasm to the normies who we want to come on and use crypto for payments, but probably would have trouble agreeing to that at mass for now, just because of all the reputational damage that was done a few years ago, and we're still recovering from it.
Well, I mean, I'd say that if Bitcoin had come out 10 years earlier, I mean, it didn't, but if it could have, in the 80s, if somebody told you had to have a bank account to run your business, in some states in the United States, you would have been shot. Like, what do you mean I have to have a bank account, right? But in that 10 to 15 years, we migrated over to ease, especially in the United States, right? Super easy access to banking, which very few other countries really have. Super easy access to electronic payments, an almost completely pervasive environment of credit cards and debit cards. So, it was so low cost here, a lot like what you said, like in Russia with banking, with mobile banking. We had banking and we had ATMs everywhere, so mobile banking wasn't quite as important to have in the United States, so we didn't have to have it. Same way, like if you look in Southeast Asia, the 5G internet speeds for wireless are amazing, whereas in like the United States and Europe, it's meh, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it is absolutely remarkable what we could do, and kind of reprehensible how little we've done of it yet.
Well, I really am curious about how did you go about convincing, because you started in Hawaii, but then you moved to Colorado and started working on blockchain based ID system there. How did you go about selling the government on the idea that blockchain technology and crypto is okay and it's actually great for to achieve what we need?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of interesting. So in Hawaii, when I was there, Hawaii has a statewide recording office. Now, most other places in the United States, it's countywide. So you go to the county, you record your marriage license. If there's, you do file UCCs there, which means like you've got a loan on a tractor or something. Mortgage notices go there. All those kinds of things get recorded at your county recording office. In Hawaii, it was essentially a state recording office and land title system. So we had the opportunity. They had a really old system, and we were going to rewrite it. And the first thing we did was like, oh, we've got to do this on Ethereum, because we were eager and stupid, but we still wanted to do it. We looked into it, and we even talked to a couple other companies that were doing similar things. And what we realized is that we would have to, what's called, if you take something in fully electronic, but you have to print it to paper, rescan it, and then pull it in, it's called papering out a document. Maybe you received it electronically, but you have to, and we would have had to do that with all the documents because there was no digital ID. There was no digital identity. So we even had a way we could have done it on just like the title, like the big mortgage companies and stuff. They could have done it. We could have set something up for them, but then everybody else would have had to been papered out. And that's what that made me realize was, sure, payments are great, but digital identity is what we're missing, even with the state of technology back then, right?
Yeah.
Digital identity is what lets you have a completely digital on-ramp into the electronic ecosystem that you have. So you fast forward, I'd done Wampei. It turned out that Hawaii, because our banking commissioner had put out some certain rules, that Hawaii was the second worst state to do crypto in the United States after New York, with the BIT license. And I was also having to travel everywhere to go. So it was really expensive. And I had 2 kids and I wanted to actually see them. So moved to the next best place in my mind, which was Colorado, and did Wampei a few more years. And then we had Governor Hickenlooper, who was a real proponent of blockchain technology and had the crypto task force that he made. And I volunteered for that. And then when Governor Polis took over, he was the first legislator to accept Bitcoin donations when he was a legislator in federal government. So he was really hot on this too. And we had this event called Crypto Day at the legislature. And he stood up and said, Colorado's in crypto for the win. And I was like, he's in crypto for the win. Talk to him a little bit about, and he actually said, yeah, we're looking for a digital transformation officer. And so I worked with OIT, the Office of Information Technology, and really went from 0 to 1.6 million users for the My Colorado digital ID. And the idea behind it wasn't that it was going to be a Web3 wallet, although we hoped eventually it could be. But what it was going to be was a fully electronic onboarding and KYC mechanism that could be used for all financial industries, including the crypto exchanges and crypto industry, including.
So what would that mean for a user?
So that would mean for a user, you want to confirm, like you sign up for a gambling site or something, or an esports site, you want to bet, right? So what you would do is you would basically go on and they'd show you a QR code, you'd scan it, you'd say, I want to send their information. It gets sent to them electronically signed. They get what's called a verifiable credential, which leverages crypto technology. And they now have instantly done know your customer and have backup for all of that. And you haven't had to go through a third party. You haven't had to wait time. In some banking situations, KYC, to comply with KYC, anti-money laundering regulations can cost $75, $80 a person and can take days.
Yeah.
When you go to like get insurance in the United States, typically you make a copy of the front and back of your driver's license. You email it or upload it to an agent or a website, and then they go work with two other companies that go and route that to the state that they need to get a driver record from, and it comes back. You can imagine how much data is exposed. There's like 6 honeypots along the way for people to go. Instead, using the technology we had, you could actually send the information and only the information that they needed directly to them. And the idea was not that this was going to onboard people to Web3, but it would make onboarding onto electronic mediums much, much easier. And that would include crypto. So, it's one of those rising tide raises all boats sort of situations. And through that, of course, we had the pandemic, and we were able to implement, I would say, arguably the best and fastest implementation of the vaccination proofs that we put through. Whereas you had the state of New York, California spent over $100 million implementing theirs. We spent about $650,000 to add it to my Colorado. So it was a great example of how having digital identity streamlines and everything and lowers costs for everything.
That's amazing. And so what was it built on? Was it actually on Ethereum?
No, so we didn't build it on any Web3 technologies. It was Web2,
Okay.
but leverages Web2, but it provides that electronic endpoint. So if you had to do KYC, you could do that. And even now, like with the MPC wallets that are out there, you could actually use your My Colorado login. If that was a project that they wanted to do, you could use that to set someone up with a Web3 wallet that was tied to their digital identity. And we had a white paper that I created about all the different applications in government that you could do once you had this identity, voting applications, even feedback for legislators, so they would know oh yeah, I only want people from my district to be able to give me feedback on these things. Maybe you give them tokens for giving you information. Maybe you reward people but they could do real surveys instead of paying money to other companies to do polling. You could have ballot measures that you just tell people, oh, here, if you support this, you can go to scan this QR code, and it won't let you sign it unless you're actually in the right location. If you live in the right location, if it's the state or if it's, and it saves enormous amounts of money, saves enormous amounts of time, and makes democracy actually much more viable. One of the biggest problems one of the reasons we have so much representative government, right, is because of the inefficiency that has existed for 225 or 50 years. And blockchain tied to a digital identity that the state recognizes can make that happen in a provably true and much more reliable and safe way.
Do you see Colorado making that step?
I think, it's hard to be to lead in too many things. I think right now you've got 2 states plus California that have had a human usable digital ID. There is the Apple and Google digital ID that they have, but it's only usable in like 3 airports, and it's not human readable. And it's really, the main purpose of it is to lower their costs for doing Google Pay and Apple Pay. So that's not really useful to many people, whereas you do now have 3 states that are showing it. So once you get to 5, then you can get the next generation of innovation. But I mean, these are states, and there's a lot of entrenched powers, lobbying, and a lot of people who are like, what do you mean digital? So there's a lot of pushback until you get to about 5 states that agree this is pretty cool. This is good. Once we get over 5, then I think that the next state will be ready to start leading with more of these things, and to give people, especially libertarian leaning states like Colorado, have an advantage in this, and that people want more say, and they want the ability to really have more fine-grained control over their government. The more clearly red and clearly blue states don't necessarily have that. They're still party lines as opposed to independent lines. So I think you're going to see it more from the more libertarian leaning states. But hey, really, wherever they see it, it's going to start to make a difference, I think.
Yeah, well, and it's such an interesting dynamic, and thank you for touching on that, which is very unique to the United States, because it is very decentralized. In a way, it is a decentralized country, more decentralized than many national states, where states within the federation usually have less authority and less autonomy than American states have over their legislation and over how they run their financial system. The fact that there's different regulations for banks in different states took me a while to grasp personally, because I come from, again, I mentioned I come from Russia. Russia is a huge country, but banking is a federal matter, and the federal government makes the regulations for banks, and they're the same for everybody across the 8 time zones. So when coming here and realizing that, financial systems in different states are really different, and that makes it's a very different dynamic, I feel, for the country and for our industry in this country, and makes it, I think, a little bit harder to coordinate as an industry, and a little bit harder for us to identify where we stand and how we go about it, because in different states we push different buttons. And of course, this year is big election year. It's a very dramatic election year, and it's also, I feel, coinciding with our industry maturing a little bit and starting to think of itself as a power. And in the last couple of years, we have seen those movements, and we've seen more lobbying in DC on behalf of our industry. And so our industry is now starting to have this conversation about, is crypto blue? Is crypto red? Is crypto libertarian, or is it anarchist? I mean, of course, if we go back to the roots of Bitcoin, many people who were attracted to it early on were building an alternative financial system that would exist when, the world goes down and there's no government at all, and then Bitcoin will be the backup currency for the world, this apocalyptic world. But fortunately, we're still not there, and now crypto is maturing and becoming a whole different thing, and trying to find its relationship with the government and its relationship with the system. And it's tricky. So where do you feel crypto falls on the political spectrum? Is it red? Is it blue? Is it somewhere in the middle? Or how should we think about it?
Yeah, I think it is. It's fascinating. You said how contentious the election is and everything, and it's more like cannabis than anything else before it. Crypto is. In that you've got red states that support cannabis, that supported legalizing cannabis. You've got blue states that supported legalizing cannabis, and you've got both that were against it for very clear reasons. I think it's even harder with crypto because it's not clear where the money and influence comes or goes that goes into crypto. So you've got CeFi crypto, like the exchanges, right? And they're mainly the ones who are funding the lobbying efforts, right? after Sam Bankman-Fried fucked us all over so bad, the and was like actually negotiating in bad faith with
Mm-hmm.
legislators on future regulations. Um, what we're in the situation now is that the CeFi crypto elements are the ones who are leading. Why is that? Well, because it's DeFi. Like there isn't a company that really benefits a whole lot from DeFi, right? There are foundations and groups, but since it's so decentralized, it's hard to get communication. So as individuals, we really have to hold our legislators account for the differences and for protecting DeFi. You know, to an exchange, it's just fine to have KYC required at all wallets because it boxes out their DeFi competition, right? So if you ask me who my favorite exchange is, I'm like, I don't really use exchanges. I onboard and offboard, and I'll do that with either ETH or USDC or something. And everything else I do is DeFi. I don't do it through an exchange because it's slow, it's expensive, and then you don't own your keys. So I don't need that. And then they charge you a fee to pull your money out of the wallet that they have for you. So the problem that I see is even though we're starting to bring attention to everything, we have a very real possibility of DeFi being boxed out of the United States. In the same way that we're all worried crypto is going to get boxed out. And if we allow that to happen, we'll lose because we know the end game of this is that DeFi done well can do almost everything better than custodial conventional finance systems can, aside from giving you a really easy way to reverse payments and to not have to be responsible about your money. Like CeFi is not going away any more than the radio's gone away or the television's gone away, but you'll have fewer reasons to use CeFi, right? I still onboard and offboard. I still have my money in bank account. I still have some of those things. Just so happens that I have to use them a lot less to get the things that I want done. This is fantastically hard to explain to a legislator, to your typical legislator who's in their late 60s and is worried about polling results and all that kind of stuff, to really get them to use it, which is why I go back to my North Star, which is payments is how we win. Going with crypto
Expand on that.
payments, well, it normalizes crypto to a point where everyone can understand it. It is not so easy to do this, sign a contract which has a bunch of numbers in it and letters that you don't know what the hell they mean. Oh yeah, I'm okay with this. Yeah, my wallet says that. Or instead I just, this costs that. I scan the QR code and I send the money to pay. Right? Super
Yeah.
simple. Venmo copied it. It worked. We know that it works, right? We had Bitcoin had a payment standard for payment requests. There's the ERC 681 payment standard that allows you to do the same thing with a QR code. You say like how much of what token on what chain, even messages and things like that can be sent, all by triggering it with a QR code. Anyone can handle that technology now that can use its cell phone, right? The reason I say that we win by going with that, because then it's normalized. Then
But
now,
then
oh
they
yeah, I
don't
do
know
get
that
all
it's
this stuff,
crypto.
right? I remember the guy who started Tetris. Basically, at one point, I heard him say, and he's a great guy. I had heard him. He lives in Hawaii now. He
Oh.
had said something like, mobile Tetris, which is what he had. Mobile Tetris basically brought upon the beginnings of the smartphone and everything that we can do with phones, because people got so used to using their phone for something other than communication. And Tetris was the first really huge, big thing on feature phones. That now
That's never
that
thought about it
we
that
can do
way.
more with that. We can do more with that. And the same thing with payments. Like once you're comfortable with it, then then everyone wants to use it.
Well, the tricky part is that if it's smooth and invisible, as you just described, then people don't even know that it's crypto. And so then they don't think of crypto as valuable technology. So it's kind of it's a catch-22. We need people to know that we bring value, but we also want it to be seamless. So I don't know how we're gonna find that balance, but there's definitely
I think it's doable, right? Like, the thing that gets me is we had 8 years in Bitcoin where we had the market cornered on a payment channel that was totally outside of anything anyone had ever done before. And what we did is we had tech bros get up and pat themselves in the back that we had solved the double spend problem, that we had solved we had solved a distributed ledger, that we had gotten that we could come to consensus, all these kinds of things, which are phenomenal technical achievements, and also boring as hell to hear, and didn't tell you anything about what it meant for you as a person.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was the first place that we lost by being so self-congratulatory and so braggy about the amazing achievements that were now possible, that we alienated everybody else and made this like technical priest class that were the only ones who understood how it could work.
Well, and it's an interesting because we always, in crypto, we always talk about how we have two different sort of modalities or mentalities, where there's the crypto bros, as you said, that are more in the speculative world, and then there's the technical gods who are less visible and less audible because they're just heads down building, and the ones who are being heard by the mainstream are the crypto bros. And so I feel that finally we are coming out of that trap and becoming a little more accessible to people. Because personally, I felt about crypto, I first heard about it in 2013, then I heard about it in 2018, and I never got in until 2021 because I didn't feel like there's a place for me. Oh, it's a speculative asset. Okay, I don't know. It's not my thing. I don't speculate necessarily. Oh, it's an advanced, amazing technology. Well, I'm not a coder. I don't know. How do I apply to that? And then when NFTs came around, that's when it was my light bulb moment. That's why I'm always curious what clicks for who. So for you, it was the payments, and it remains payments. And I love how you keep that conviction in crypto payments strong. And we're seeing that it playing out now on a whole new way. So speaking of us sort of evolving, there's some big movements happening on the Hill in DC. There's some votes going through. So can you get a little bit into explaining for our audience what SAB 121 is and why is it meaningful?
Well, I'm not an accountant. I'm not the right person to talk about really SAB 121.
Okay.
But I will say, and with respect to Fit 21, for the first time, we're actually recognizing that the system that we have was written in the early 1900s. And so just having that conversation and being willing to do, that, especially with Fit 21, is, I think, critically important. That we can maybe get past talking about the Howey test and oranges, and talk about, something that recognizes that this technology is significantly different, because the regulators know it, and you can't really blame most of them for being worried. Let's be honest, 99.5% of the stuff that's out there, if not is a complete scam, is scammy. because it's so easy to make these things. So,
Yep.
their job is, their job is to protect little old ladies and little old men from losing their retirement funds, right? Because nothing is worse than that. So actually having like legislation that recognizes digital assets, that makes a class of them, that talks about different types of tokens, that you know when Elizabeth Warren stands up and talks about the crypto industry and all of blockchain being this horrible problem, I I was a supporter of Senator Warren until she started taking such a hard case against this. And the fact is it's clear if you follow the money why she's against it. I'll leave it at that. Um, but this is completely a new technology, and what's happening is we're taking what was the best solution that we could come up with a century ago, and we're saying that this is somehow the only way to go for this, and it's just a mistake. And it's the process of talking about these two things are giving an opportunity for education across the board. I think what I would tell people to do is anytime you talk to a legislator, you ask them, when will I be able to donate to you in crypto?
That's a good one.
Right? Like when can I donate to you in crypto? Because that will make a difference. How people are getting their money is important. They're still going to go through their bank, but you use a platform like Giveth or something to accept donations. It's a game changer for the way people see this. They don't see it as a scam. They see it as a way. I mean, my daughter last year came up with a project she was a senior in high school, where they used NFTs to generate money, and each of the NFTs paid for an incubator to let baby penguins grow in South Africa. And like there are great applications for this, and we as an industry need to stop being such horrible, stop leaning into the horrible side of things, stop leaning into the easy money, and actually like use this technology to improve the world. There's still plenty of money to be made, but you can do it in a way you can be proud of for the rest of your life and maybe not end up in jail. That's what we really should be doing.
I love that sentiment. And as you said, there's nothing wrong with making money. We all live in a more or less capitalist world. We need to pay bills. Nobody denies that. But there are ways to make money, and there are ways to make money. And right. And it's interesting how, because of our different mentalities and our different visions about what's the important part of crypto, there's the builders and then there's the casino people. There's the difference in how we approach onboarding into our industry. And of course, it's easier to attract people through easy money because earlier this year, there's been this whole conversation about, there's a lot of financial nihilism. A lot of younger people feel very disappointed in the existing system. They feel that there's no way to win within that system, and they're looking for a way to break out and break through. And because of that, they're not even really interested in having the conversation with the government. They would prefer the government not to get into it at all, and preferably not even pay taxes on it. But okay, like fine, we'll pay the taxes, but we'll do everything we can to harvest our losses and do all the things that we can to pay less. But what you're saying about creating change and creating projects that can help us create value and make money, and also be proud of that, and not just money that we've made and the wealth that we've created for ourselves, but actually the thing that we made. I do have one more question about the relationship between crypto and the state. And there's this whole other concept of state, the network state. And I know Bufficorn Ventures invested in Build Cities and other projects that are in the realm of network state building. So how, as somebody who works with government and has sort of this government and regulation positive mindset, I guess, more or less, right? Sensible regulation. How do you reconcile that with the future of the state? And do you see the future of the network state as the future where we're actually going?
Yeah, I just want, before I answer that, I just want to say that, like, I think any degens that are listening need to really ask themselves, like, when you don't want to pay taxes and you don't want to, you just don't want the government to have anything about it, and then suddenly you get screwed over. Are you quiet? Do you not complain about how the government didn't protect you? Because I know a lot of degens who, oh yeah, I don't pay with crypto. I use Venmo or PayPal. Like, I'm like, oh really? Like, that makes no sense, right? You should, if you're gonna lean in to being a degen, and not be an anarchist who worships money, right? But you really do want to be a degen, then you should, like, live it a little more for real and think about what you're doing every time you do something. So as far as the modern state will be a digital state. The question is do you want a state that is a surveillance state or not? And I think that is really the most important question. So there's zero, like, anybody who's gotten into blockchain technology on the like ledger side and the technology side understands that the way that you can improve accountability, transparency, you want to know how your legislator voted, it would be one click away. You want to know how much money was spent on what in a state budget, it could be there. You can do all those things so much more easily in using blockchain technology, mostly because the infrastructure is a part of the service itself, right? You don't have to go and install databases and put all this stuff onto Amazon or Microsoft or Google or whatever SaaS platform. It's all built in. Like, it's all out there as a public good that you pay for one transaction at a time. So all of these things that everybody gets upset about, whether you're somebody who thinks that the voting system isn't okay, or you're upset about the way people spend, or you want more representation in the way decisions are made, or you want transparency, all of these are the drivers of the digital state, right? And and by that I mean the digital state that is where actual current states should be to leverage the technology of the digital state. Right. So what Build is trying to do to build these different, whether it's location based or it's birds of a feather sort of communities that they're building, the idea is to leverage the technology that we have to make them more efficient, make it easier to get to human connection, which is really what we all need to get anything done. And the states that commit to doing that to leveraging blockchain will have the advantage of making their government more reliable, more dependable, and something that citizens of that state are proud of. And that's what we lack a lot of right now, right? I believe in the voting system. I believe in that. This is great. I love that I know if this senator went and got a special cherry deal because they're getting funding from somebody else. Like, we track where money comes from in state government. Why not put that on the blockchain and make it really accessible? Why, these technologies lower the costs of running government by orders of magnitudes and improve everything across the board for governance of the government, which is what's supposed to be what citizens do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it does put more responsibility on the individuals to be more engaged and to be more self-sovereign and actually make time. And that's where it always becomes tricky. Yes, we can make everything transparent and we can make everything visible, but then we need people to actually care to see it and care to make conclusions and act on the information that they have received from all of that. And that is it's part of culture, and it's definitely stronger in the US. Again, I'm comparing to Russia, where most things were not visible to people. You don't really even know how much taxes you're paying every year. So you think about it a little less. It's a little less obvious to you that it's the government serving you based on how much money you're giving it. It doesn't really compute that way for most Russians, because that's just not how people think about it. In America, obviously, people know how much they're paying, and there's much more concern with where did my money go. But there is that balance of how much can we really expect people to take on in terms of looking into things, and how much in the last years there is this eroding trust in institutions, and eroding trust in institutions such as even media. And in order for us to be able to take advantage of all that transparency, we need to sort of start thinking of what are the new institutions that we will be able to delegate some sort of trust to, where they would aggregate this information for us and we would have control over. I don't know if there's anything like that's happening already, but I know there are organizations in blockchain space, and I know you're very active in some organizations that are working with the government. Do people think about it that way? Do people talk about that kind of stuff?
I think they don't talk about it in a technology focused way, but they want that. The people that get into government for the right reason, the people who are working in government definitely do. The ones that are the elected officials, they have lots of incentives to get pulled into the lobbyist machinery and all that kind of stuff. That's why, like, in a lot of ways, we trust people who can fund their own campaigns more than those who can't, right? Because you feel like that they have a measure of independence, which is another thing that could be proven by using blockchain technology. But I think that the we've been questioning our institutions for a long time in the United States. You could argue that that was one of the reasons why Vietnam was such a the backlash from Vietnam, and really everything that we've been in since has has further diminished our opinion of maybe the media. So I think that's been happening for a long time. This is the first time, though, in the last 8 to 10 years, has been the first time we've really gone after government with a fervor that, when you think about it, we've got a lot more reasons to trust government than corporations. No matter who you are, if you trust Google more than you trust your state, then you have an insurmountable problem. Like, if you really do, So yeah, you have to really think about, like, and it's very nuanced, and it's not something we're used to doing. Now, I will say, compare the United States to someplace like Australia, where I think 85% of the population votes. Why do they vote? Well, the first is that everybody gets the day off as a holiday. The second is that they get to go to jail if they don't vote, if they don't have a good reason, because it's their duty to vote. So perhaps part of the problem is that we've made it so easy not to vote.
Yeah.
In the United States.
Almost
Like
easier not to vote. Yeah.
so, and that's the way, some people, if you're in a state that's heavily leaning one way or the other, then certainly that party, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, is going to lean towards, well, we don't really have a problem here. Why do we want more people to vote?
Well, and people generally in their personal decision-making process, oh, do I have to go? Maybe I don't need to even go there. And then,
Right.
But there's more things on the ballot than just the main thing. And then those opportunities are passed on and not
Right.
being expressed on by the voters. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess that's part of the culture that we'll need to continue building, and that idea of responsibility and self-sovereignty. And I think the idea of self-sovereignty financially is a very good training wheel for people, and generally participating in more decentralized systems and decentralized organizations is a great way for training people to be more responsible and be more thoughtful about how they approach institutions. Because going back a little bit to media conversation, yes, people distrust mainstream media, but then they somehow trust the algorithm of this or that social network, whether it's Twitter or it's TikTok. And I just personally don't understand, why would you trust TikTok more than New York Times or Fox? If you are mindful of being manipulated, be mindful across the board.
Right. Exactly. Don't just pick and choose, but what social media understands is that a combination of the network effect and ease of use makes it really exciting. The algorithms just keep that serotonin pumping, but that, having negative headlines nonstop in media villainizing everyone that doesn't have the exact pre-prescribed view is a way to get more serotonin shot off into people's brains, but it's also a way to turn off a good 50 or 60% of the population who doesn't want any part of it. Yeah, learning to use your own wallet is taking responsibility, right? Managing your own keys is responsibility. Realizing that you have access to find out what's happening at your local government level and make a difference. That is empowering, and it goes all the way up. Not voting because you can't tell the difference between the presidential candidates means that you're not voting on the local election and the state election and the county election and the municipal elections that govern everything about how you live day to day. And people don't take responsibility for that. Maybe we're not educating them enough. Maybe it's just too easy for them to go look at something else. But that's kind of the UX problem that we as a civilization have to fix. Otherwise, we're going to be this. It's just going to be a different scale, but it's just bacteria in a petri dish, and we'll butt up against the edge and run out of food if we don't start figuring out how to work together on this stuff and be reasonable.
Being reasonable, amen to that. Well, I really wish us all be reasonable for the next few months until the election, so that we can survive this year. Well, we are at the end of the hour, and this is an amazing conversation, and obviously we can talk for hours about how can we fix everything. But just to wrap it up, what are some of the things that you're building, what you're focusing on, and how can people support what you're doing?
So obviously, with Bufficorn Ventures, we are working with super early stage Web3 companies that can and will make a difference, and will make Web3 technology something that, believe it or not, moves into the sidelines. Like when we stop talking about Web3, we will have won. In the same way that when people stopped talking about relational databases, everybody was using them. When people stopped talking about web application development, we won because everything was going to web app. When we stop having to talk about blockchain, stop having to talk about Web3 because it's built into everything that you use, it will just be part of the technology stack, and that's where we will have won. But I think that the most important things that we have now are to get wallets to a point that people, meaning regular people, not the people who understand how wallets are supposed to work, can use them reliably and without fear. And that we can focus our efforts on projects that bring value and are not just extractive. And I'm just talking about meme coins and other other things like that. We have so many problems that we could solve, and there's so much money to be made by solving those problems. Let's just make those more interesting. And a great way to find out about more of those, of course, is to come to ETHDenver every year, which is the best conference that's out there, or web event.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's definitely the best place for builders in the US to gather and build together, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Russell. It's an awesome conversation, and I hope to have you back on the show at some point.
Anytime, Sasha. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I love talking about how these technologies can help us evolve democracy all the time.
All the time. Thank you.
That was a fun chat. For more of these, follow the engine everywhere on YouTube, in your favorite podcatcher, on social media, on Twitter, X, on Farcaster, on LinkedIn. Don't just follow. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about crypto and government. Do you think crypto is blue? Do you think crypto is red? Do you think crypto is libertarian? What do you think about all of these new regulations? What do you feel about all of these moves in DC? What does it mean for us? Share your thoughts. Let us know what you think. And of course, check out Skylab, apply and join. Check out Threshold Network and Taco Access Control plugin. Check out Build Cities, mint a Dream NFT. All the links are in the description. And that's our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Struggle well, fellow builder. You can do it. Cheers.